Imagine this: a pastor known for his charismatic sermons and millions of devoted followers finally meets someone who doesn't bow, someone who calls him out in front of the world. At 38, Pastor Carn, a man whose words inspire thousands, suddenly finds himself trolled, not by a fan, not by a critic, but by gospel royalty himself, Marvin Winans. What happened next left the faith community shocked, divided, and questioning everything they thought they knew. You won't believe the moment that changed everything for Pastor Carn, and how one simple act ignited a firestorm that no one saw coming. For years, Pastor Carn has been a rising star in the gospel world, a man whose sermons light up churches and social media alike. But behind the spotlight, behind the polished messages and viral videos, there's a side of his journey most people never see. A side filled with pressures, rivalries, and moments that test even the strongest faith. And then came Marvin Winans, a legend in gospel music, a voice that commands respect and attention. When Marvin decided to speak, or in this case, troll, Carn, the moment wasn't just embarrassing, it was historic. What started as a playful jab quickly spiraled into a public spectacle, leaving the community talking, debating, and questioning who holds the real influence in today's gospel world. In this video, we're diving deep into what really happened between Pastor Carn and Marvin Winans, the words exchanged, the reactions, the shockwaves that rippled through the gospel community. By the end, you'll understand why this isn't just a simple troll and why it could change everything for Pastor Carn's reputation and career. And trust me, the part where Marvin makes his move, that's where it gets unbelievable. Pastor Carn wasn't always in the spotlight. Like many spiritual leaders, his journey began quietly, rooted in faith, family, and a calling that seemed larger than life. By his late 20s, he was already making waves in the gospel community, known for sermons that weren't just inspirational but electrifying. Videos of his impassioned preaching began circulating online, and soon, Carn became a name people associated with power, charisma, and influence in the modern church. But success, as it often does, brought scrutiny. Every sermon, every public appearance, every social media post was watched, dissected, and sometimes criticized. Some loved him, others envied him. And while the numbers of followers soared, whispers of rivalry started circulating quietly behind closed doors. It's a world where influence equals authority, and authority can make you a target in unexpected ways. By the time he reached 38, Pastor Carn had built a loyal following, international recognition, and a platform that many would envy. Yet, little did he know that his journey was about to collide with a figure who carries a legacy even deeper than fame, Marvin Winans. The key question everyone started asking was simple. Could anyone, even a legend like Winans, actually rattle the confident, seasoned pastor? But what happened when their paths finally crossed? That's where the story takes a sharp turn, and what happened next would shock not just Pastor Carn, but the entire gospel community. Marvin Winans isn't just a name in gospel music, he's a living legend. With decades of influence, chart-topping hits, and a voice that has moved millions, he carries an aura that demands respect. When people speak of authority in the gospel world, Winans' name inevitably comes up. And it's this reputation that made his interaction with Pastor Carn so unprecedented. It all began at a high-profile gospel event. The audience was buzzing, cameras rolling, and the energy was electric. Pastor Carn had just delivered a sermon, his words echoing across the auditorium, stirring hearts, and igniting social media clips. It was a moment that, for him, felt triumphant. But in the crowd, Marvin Winans was watching, his expression calm but penetrating, like someone who already knew the story before it unfolded. Then, it happened. In what seemed like a casual offhand comment, but one loaded with authority, Marvin Winans spoke directly to Carn. The words were playful on the surface, but they carried a sting no one expected. For those watching, it wasn't just a joke. It was a subtle challenge, almost a test of Pastor Carn's composure and reputation. The audience gasped. Cameras caught every flicker of expression on Pastor Carn's face. The momentary hesitation, the split-second smile, the slight tightening of his jaw. It was clear he hadn't anticipated this. The energy in the room shifted. People who had been cheering moments before now whispered to each other, trying to process what had just happened. Social media would explode with clips and reactions within hours. What makes this moment so fascinating isn't just the words themselves. It's the dynamic of power, respect, and influence in the gospel world. Pastor Carn, with all his charisma and growing following, was suddenly in a position where he had to respond, not just to Marvin Winans, but to the eyes of the world watching. And the way he handled, or stumbled through, the moment would define public perception for weeks to come. But here's where it gets even more shocking. The trolling didn't end with Marvin's initial comment. What followed next was a series of subtle digs, layered in humor and authority, that left Pastor Carn momentarily speechless. It was a mix of admiration, challenge, and public scrutiny, everything rolled into one. People online started debating, was this playful banter, or a public calling out that could damage a pastor's reputation? By the end of the encounter, the room was buzzing, the internet was aflame, and Pastor Carn walked away with more than just applause. He had a new challenge, one that would test his patience, humility, and the very foundation of his public persona. And just when everyone thought the moment had passed, something happened that made the trolling unforgettable. What Marvin did next changed the narrative entirely, and it's something that even Brian Carn couldn't anticipate. Just when everyone thought the exchange between Marvin Winans and Pastor Brian Carn was over, the story took an unexpected turn that no one saw coming. What began as a subtle jab quickly escalated into a moment that would leave the entire gospel community talking for weeks. After the initial playful trolling, Marvin leaned in with a calm, deliberate voice, but the words carried a weight that seemed to reverberate through the auditorium. "Brian, sometimes being loud isn't the same as being heard," he said, his eyes locking on Pastor Carn's. A murmur ran through the crowd. For a man accustomed to commanding attention with every sermon, the comment hit differently. It wasn't aggressive. It wasn't mean-spirited. It was almost surgical in its delivery, leaving everyone in suspense. At first, Pastor Carn smiled politely, trying to maintain composure, but those in the front rows could see the flicker of uncertainty. What was meant to be a light-hearted event suddenly felt like a masterclass in humility. Social media immediately picked up on it, clips spreading like wildfire, captions asking, "Did Marvin Winans just call out Pastor Brian Carn?" Then came the twist that really shocked people. Marvin didn't stop there. In a move that was both humorous and deeply pointed, he referenced a past sermon of Brian Carn's, a moment that had gone viral months earlier, using it as the basis for a playful yet piercing critique. The crowd erupted in laughter, some supportive, others incredulous, while Brian Carn's reaction was caught in that perfect balance between amusement and embarrassment. It was more than a joke. It was a statement. Marvin had just reminded everyone that influence isn't just about charisma or viral sermons. It's about respect, legacy, and the authenticity of your message. And for Brian Carn, who had built his reputation on being bold, loud, and magnetic, this was a wake-up call. The aftermath was immediate. Clips were trending, tweets were pouring in, and online forums lit up with debates. Was Marvin Winans showing humility and leadership? Or was he publicly humiliating a fellow pastor? Was Brian Carn being called out fairly? Or had he been set up for a moment that would follow him for months? Even more compelling, the tension wasn't just public. It was personal. Sources close to Pastor Carn revealed that he was shaken more than he let on. Behind the scenes, there were calls, private discussions, and reflections on what had just happened. Was this a lesson in humility? A reminder that fame and influence don't guarantee immunity from critique? Or was it a spark that would ignite a deeper rivalry between two powerful figures in the gospel world? And just when people thought the story couldn't get any more intense, Marvin did one final thing that cemented the moment in gospel history. In front of cameras and thousands of live witnesses, he dropped a line that was equal parts challenge and praise. A line that would haunt conversations and headlines for weeks to come. The room fell silent. Even Brian Carn's most devoted followers were left questioning their perception of the moment. It was a twist that no one anticipated. A moment that blurred the lines between mentorship and rivalry, humor and critique, respect and confrontation. and it would set the stage for the fallout that followed, online, in churches, and behind closed doors in the gospel community. The moment Marvin Winans trolled Pastor Carn didn't just stay on stage, it exploded online and across the gospel community like wildfire. Within hours, clips of the encounter went viral. The hashtag #BrianCarnvs Marvin Winans started trending on social media platforms. Fans, critics, and casual observers alike weighed in, debating every nuance of the exchange. Some praised Marvin for his bold honesty, framing the moment as a lesson in humility and spiritual leadership. Others criticized him, claiming that even playful jabs shouldn't come at the expense of a fellow pastor's dignity. Pastor Carn's followers were equally divided. Loyal fans defended him fiercely, sharing clips of his sermons, testimonials, and accomplishments, arguing that he didn't deserve to be publicly challenged in such a way. Others admitted that Marvin's words carried truth, sparking introspection about the responsibilities that come with influence. Comments flooded YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram, ranging from supportive to critical, all magnifying the tension. The media, sensing controversy, jumped on the story immediately. Gospel-focused news outlets dissected every frame of the interaction, replaying Marvin's words, analyzing Pastor Carn's reactions, and interviewing witnesses. The story wasn't just trending, it became a cultural talking point within the faith community, sparking debates on respect, rivalry, and the evolving dynamics of gospel leadership. Headlines read like tabloid drama: Marvin Winans publicly calls out Pastor Carn, or Gospel legend teaches humility to rising pastor. Even fellow pastors and gospel artists weighed in. Some reached out privately to both men, offering support or advice on handling public scrutiny. Others commented publicly, subtly referencing the incident in interviews or social media posts, fanning the flames of curiosity and speculation. The incident became a mirror reflecting the pressures of modern gospel leadership, where charisma, online presence, and legacy collide in high-stakes public arenas. Behind the scenes, sources close to Pastor Carn revealed that the trolling had struck a personal chord. Even though he maintained composure, publicly, privately, he reflected on what had happened. Friends described him as contemplative, almost shaken, as he considered the layers of meaning in Marvin's words. It wasn't just about a joke or a playful jab. It was a lesson in humility, influence, and the thin line between admiration and critique. And then there was the audience, the millions who witnessed the moment online. For some, it was entertaining drama, something to share and discuss. For others, it became a teaching moment, a cautionary tale about pride, perception, and the responsibilities of influence. The incident sparked broader discussions about accountability in the gospel world. How should leaders respond when confronted publicly? How do you navigate the balance between charisma and credibility? And what does it really mean to lead a faith community in an era dominated by social media and instant judgment? As the days passed, the narrative continued to evolve. Memes, reaction videos, and commentary flooded platforms, keeping the story alive long after the event ended. Pastor Carn posted a statement, measured yet sincere, reflecting on the incident, acknowledging the learning experience, and appealing to his followers to focus on faith and unity. Marvin Winans, meanwhile, remained enigmatic, his brief comments online only fueling speculation about his intentions, leaving everyone to wonder. Was this a moment of mentorship, a gentle warning, or a public power move? And here's the kicker. The incident didn't just fade away. Instead, it planted a seed of curiosity, debate, and tension that would define the public perception of both men moving forward. Fans were left asking questions that couldn't be answered immediately. Who really had the upper hand in this exchange? Was Carn humbled or humiliated? And could this interaction reshape the landscape of gospel leadership for years to come? By now, the incident had transformed from a fleeting moment into a defining story, one that would follow both men, provoke conversation, and challenge assumptions about influence, respect, and the dynamics of modern faith leadership.